Can you hear those birds?
Yep.
Yeah.
Adds a bit of atmosphere.
Yeah, they're called noisy miners for a reason. All right, we're live. What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's daily Q&A. Today we're talking about how to rehab tennis elbow. This one comes directly from a question from one of our Epic Tribe members in the UMS Movement Mastermind Facebook group. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you use the link to get on over there. You can find it all over our channel or in the description. It's one of the best ways to connect with us on a deeper level because you can post videos there and we can give you critique, unlike what you can do here on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, smash that like button, and I'm just going to refresh my page. Now, we are absolutely thrilled to have two legends on the stream with me today. In case we haven't met, my name is Yanni Bormeister. Below me, in the middle, is Richard the Rig Lellies. We are the head coaches of Unity Gym and the Unify Movement System. And today we are joined by Phil White. We like to call him Dr. Phil. He is the chief physiotherapist at ADPT Physio. And ADPT Physio are, in my opinion, the premium physical therapy and physiotherapy service that you can access online or in person here in Sydney, Australia. They give the athlete experience to the everyday warrior. Phil, how are you?
Yeah, stoked to be back on. It's been a couple of weeks. Yeah, there's lots going on. Beginning of the year, big changes, lots to do. But yeah, keen to now have carved out Wednesday mornings to jump on here, harken back to the old Physio Fridays when we're doing the podcast weekly. But now I'll be doing kind of Physio Wednesdays. Doesn't quite have the same ring, but it's good to be back.
It's certainly I think it still sounds amazing. Physio Wednesday. How are you, Richie?
I'm good. I'm nice and cool today. It's a change of weather. If you guys tuned in yesterday, I was complaining about how bloody hot it was in my room. And today's flipped complete opposite. So I'm enjoying the cooler weather.
Yeah, absolutely. I went for a walk in the rain this morning. It was great, taking the boys to school and preschool. Okay, quick shout out to everyone catching on the live stream. Please do let us know who you are in the comments section, whether you're on YouTube or on the Facebook group, the Movement Mastermind Facebook group. And let's dive in. This question comes from Alan Deal on January 28th. We have been saving this one because I did want Phil on the call when we dived into it. I've been dealing with tennis elbow for over 2 years now. Tried physical therapy, which we're going to talk about that specific statement in just a second. I'll let Phil address that, but I'll tell you why in a sec. 10x surgery and traditional lateral epicondyle release surgery, and still have issues. I just purchased your forearm and elbow rehab program, and while I like the exercises presented, what isn't discussed is progression outside of the 3 program phases from the rehab program. We'll address that in a sec. Would you be able to elaborate either here or on your podcast? Let's do it here. Choosing a starting weight and when to increase that weight. Very good questions. Would it be at the end of phase 3 cycle and starting over at phase 1 with a heavier weight? I see indicators for accumulation and deload. Do they apply here regarding weight choice? We'll address that. I've seen on YouTube videos discussion about the 24-hour rule, and we'll talk about what that is here. If it hurts worse the same time the next day, then the intensity was too much. If I'm in pain every day with it already, how do I gauge where to start and what I should feel? I'll let Phil dive into that first up here because it's very important. There are times it hurts worse the next day after I've done nothing the day before. Lol. Also, not discussed is frequency. I'm assuming 6 days a week is recommended by the worksheet. We'll discuss that. And lastly, can you discuss the thought process behind when knowing if other types of exercises in traditional workouts, PPL, I don't know what that stands for, PPL, might be okay to try again starting light, of course. I look forward to your feedback. Thank you. Wow, there's a lot to dive into here, but there are a lot of really, really great questions. And this is a topic that we have all experienced. I'm actually experiencing medial epicondylitis right now. And I know that Phil has had his own experiences. I know that Richard's had his own experiences, and we've all successfully rehabbed at different times. So let's dive in very quickly, Phil. I don't know if you can. Can you just very quickly, in under a minute, explain what 10x surgery and traditional lateral epicondyle release surgery is?
Yeah. So basically, it's a really common thing for people who have had an injury for a long time to then want to address the structural changes to try and get an increase in. And that's what surgeons will typically recommend is like, hey, you've got this tissue that has, X amount of scar tissue or X amount of damage. And then therefore, if we fix that scar tissue, when I say fix that scar tissue, I mean remove the scar tissue, change the structure of the tendon, then that should then make the pain better. Am I cutting out? Or
Then that should then make the pain better.
I think Yanni's just getting a bit of echo through his speakers.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Sorry, I've got it now. Yep, I've got a lot of monitors going on here and a lot happening. Yeah, apologies.
All good.
Something
He's
got
in the
prepped.
matrix.
Yeah, something just changed. Okay, continue.
Cool.
Sorry.
So basically with tendinopathies, it is a common thing for surgeons to start with the first line kind of treatment of a steroid injection to try and reduce inflammation. And then if that doesn't work, then they go into surgery. And so this is the kind of old school approach, and unfortunately still what a lot of people are recommended and are doing. And it can have good results. Some people, it's kind of the whole premise of the surgery is around scar tissue and the structure. And what we know about pain, structural damage does not have a direct impact on the pain itself. So with it, basically, to get into your direct question of what the surgeries are, so the lateral epicondyle release is the more the traditional. It's basically going in there, trying to cut off some scar tissue, create basically a bit more, and also doing some incisions in the tendon itself to try and basically take some of the tension mechanically out of the tendon. But it's quite invasive, as you can imagine, and there's a decent amount of recovery time after that. But the premise being that you've removed tissue and from the muscle. But then the 10x up, because I hadn't heard of it, seems to be something that's probably more direct, and it was quite interesting getting that exposure to the American healthcare system again, where when looking this up, you see these there's a show called The Doctors, and they did this 10x procedure on screen, and it was like I don't know, it was like a Jerry, what's it called?
Jerry Maguire.
Jeremy, like one of those weird on stage,
Yeah,
hey everyone,
right.
check this out,
Jerry
look at this thing,
Springer.
and
Jerry
it's just so
Springer.
much more Jerry Springer, yes, so much more commercialization, and one of the things on the 10x website is it's sort of it's almost telling you to request it from your doctor, and I always forget in the US that they have ads and ads for surgeries don't have here in Australia because anyway, that's a whole sidebar, but it was just quite an interesting insight to the American system. But basically with the 10x is what they're doing is they're taking that same approach of trying to remove scar tissue to think that will solve all pain and function issues. And so they're basically going in there with this ultrasonic needle, which vibrates really quickly and has a vacuum that sucks out the scar tissue. And then it's meant to be less invasive, to do quite as large incision, and you're meant to be back to kind of doing your normal thing in sort of 6 weeks. So that's a basic outline of the what those surgeries are. Whether or not they're the right thing to do, it's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I'm only going to give my 2 cents very quickly because we have limited time here. Is my understanding is that any surgical intervention leaves you with scar tissue that you have to then deal with afterwards. So it kind of it always didn't make a lot of sense to me to operate on tendinopathy.
So basically, with the scar tissue thing, I think that's the most important thing to address here, and the most important sort of belief for people to have challenged and changed around this is that they're basically, as we've talked about, structure not equal pain and dysfunction. There are plenty of people who will have, if you scanned them, they would have scar tissue and they'd have changes on their imaging, so they tendon as if there was pathology going on, but they'd have zero changes to structure or function. In changes in pain or function. It's really good sort of this Achilles. Basically, if it's really progressed, you can get they call it like a donut like thing, where basically like the tendon, not a huge chunk, but like a chunk of the tendon basically goes in disrepair and almost like isn't there anymore. Like it sort of is no longer at all useful fibers, but around it you get like this thickening of the tendon, that area of disrepair. You get all of these other tendon structures that force it, and so they're basically, the body's really good at sending reinforcements and sending like what needs to be there, but you can have that donut hole in the Achilles tendon and have like zero change to structure or pain as well. So it's highlight that, again, it's tempting and it's been a really common thing in the medical to just attack structure and hope that will fix pain. Really, like that isn't always the case. And our friend here who's asked the question is a good example of this, where he's had this surgery and it's just more complicated than that. And we won't have time to go into the whole thing of contemporary brain like pain science, but it's not that simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, Phil, we're getting a lot of internet dropouts with your stream again.
This Kiama one's meant to be good.
What's that?
In Kiama, like my internet's meant to be good. I was checking the speeds before and it was fine. Anyway.
Yeah, really. It's the latency. I think it's unfortunate. Anyway, but yeah, look, it's one of those things that I think like I'm starting to realize that we probably need more time to dive into this one, because it is like to talk about the progression, and that's what we'll finish on here. That's what we're going to have time for, because I do want to leave Alan with something practical to end with here. Which is, what would you suggest in regards to the fact, like we usually say, manage discomfort. You have to stimulate the tissue. The worst thing you can do is, abuse it again with overstimulus. But the second and very close second is to do nothing at all, right? Because you're just allowing the tissue to continue to become more and more weak, more and more compromised. And the issue came from weakness and exceeding that load capacity in the first place. So we have to figure out how to reintroduce stimulus at the right level and then progress it from there, so that over time we build it back up to where it was and beyond. And what would you suggest the best way to do that? The rehab program that we've put together is perfect, I believe, for someone like Alan to start with, who's come from a surgical intervention, who needs to take it quite gradual. But then at some point we want to reintroduce, like proper loading, like deadlifts, like pull-ups, where you're gripping the bar and also moving heavy loads. And that is, I think, one of the most important parts of the rehab process. Yes, if you're suffering really extreme tendinopathy, there are certain circumstances where we would take someone right back to this sort of rehab stage, and we start to do more isolated movements where we're working on supination, pronation, flexion, extension of the forearms, gripping, and things like that, and controlled flexion, extension of the elbow under load with different grips. But eventually, we do want to progress to loading with a larger repertoire of more complex movement patterns, right?
I'd even challenge that and say that, like, I'd definitely be getting horizontal pushing, pulling, and ideally, horizontal and vertical pushing, pulling, and external rotation in there, because like we want to be taking a lot of the brain focus away from elbow and rehab exercises, and you can change things around how you grip to offload it, and you can use things like straps. But like, and when it comes down to the upper body as a system, like you need to have strong and stable shoulders to basically load the forearm. So I'd even look at adding that stuff in, but obviously that's hard. I haven't quite got the guidance around it. So that's why I like to work with people individually to do this. But yeah, like the with tendinopathies is we do need to build up that kind of load tolerance. And you were asking about protocols around progress, and basically I think like 6 days a week is too much for this at the moment. I'd go day on, day off, and the thing around if the pain is too much or too little the next day, basically have an idea of what your baseline pain is. That might be 0, might be 1 out of 10, might be 2 out of 10, might be 4, and basically you exceed that baseline pain the next day, then you've probably done something the day before which has been a bit too much, and so you want to cut it back. But that doesn't mean it's always the exercises that have flared it up, because it's really common extensor tendon that a mouse sitting on a computer and being on a keyboard for a long period of time can be the most aggravating part for that particular tendon. So if you then go back and deload your strength exercise, then you're in this like horrible loop. So yeah, there's more to it than just the exercises you're doing. It's looking at the whole of that. And but again,
and that's a really good point to consider. The concept of macro and micro loading, and what you're doing outside of the gym plays a huge role in the recovery process. And you have to start really thinking about that, what have I done differently? What am I doing anything that you're using your fingers, think about anything where you're using your fingers or your forearms or your elbows to move. And if you're doing things where you're in a position for a long period of time, like your mouse, like your keyboard, then you're loading that tissue for that whole period.
Particularly in that sort of wrist extension position, if you're typing like that. So for like an example, I have this mouse pad which has, so that means it is a neutral while I'm using you can also get a similar thing for a keyboard, which put you in a position where it just means that you're not doing a constant extension contraction every time you type. And that's really common on keyboards and people working from home and being in meaning that you're sort of in this horrible all day. So, but then also for people who it's also a really common challenge for people who have manual labor jobs, because obviously you're using your forearms so much throughout work, and so that does become a bit trickier. But there are certain like changes in the tool if you're doing lots of different screwdrivers that have ratchets instead of just classic screwdrivers and things like that to make it a bit easier. But yeah, it's all very individual to what your activities are.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will. I'll continue on discussing this a bit tomorrow. I know that Phil's limited with his time. I think we can go deeper into a few of the other questions, a few of the other parts of the question there. But it's really great to get your insight, especially around the interventions and the concept of this. But we could talk all day, because there's so much that comes into this around pain science and around the psychological aspect of an injury that has to be addressed as well. And it might just be a really, really beneficial thing for Alan to reach out and connect with you directly and have a chat, and see if he could have a consult. I don't know where Alan is in the world, and obviously in the USA, it's a little bit more tricky to do consultations, but you can certainly give feedback. And
there's that US health system again, making things harder.
A little bit more tricky. Yeah, that's right.
Insurance-wise, I can't treat people in the US.
Yeah. Now we have to jump into our 6-week peak performance tribe to give them their daily group coaching call. We're running a little bit behind schedule, so we will continue this discussion tomorrow. There's a lot of value that we can give. I do apologise for the internet issues. We will continue to work on that and make sure that we can get Phil on here every week. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks, Richie. We couldn't get you to shut up in that talk.
All good.
Settle down, Richie.
And thanks, Will. Thanks, Phil. Thank you very much for joining us and giving us your insights. We'll see you tomorrow, tribe.
See you guys.